I'd like to call this priority setting session of the Concord City Council to order. We'll start with the roll call. Councilor Brown?
Here.
Mayor Champlin present. Councilor Davey?
Here.
Councilor Fennessy, not arrived. Councilor Foote?
Present.
Councilor Grady Sexton?
Here.
Councilor Horn?
Here.
Councilor Caleb?
Here.
Councilor Keach, not here. Councilor Kretovic?
Here.
Councilor Kurtz?
Present.
Councilor Schlosser?
Here.
Councilor Schultz?
Here.
Councilor Seku?
Here.
And Councilor Todd?
Here.
We have a quorum, we can move forward. And Councilor Fennessy is present.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Before you start, is anyone else having trouble with Wi-Fi?
Me.
At
I was
the
just about to say that.
What are your, do you need help?
Yeah, no, I
No,
mean,
it's
this
not
device,
connecting.
it's a Wi-Fi issue. This device is connected many times. Okay, I can live without it, but
All
I
right.
just,
Well, I can only recommend good old-fashioned paper, Councilor.
well, if only I had my
Wait,
printer
do
on
we,
here.
right, do we have printed copies of it? Because this was the way I was gonna pull it up.
Yeah,
too.
I don't,
Yeah,
no, I printed off copies.
You've spoiled us by
Sorry,
giving us
well,
all these wonderful documents on our
I
iPads.
apologize.
I'm definitely not ready
Hate to
without it.
spoil all of you.
All
All right.
Yeah, we can phone hotspot. That's a good idea.
So this is the priority setting session of the City Council.
Please.
My intent would be to run the meeting fairly informally. I will ask you to be identified to speak, but otherwise I think this is a casual setting. And what I would suggest that we do is, as a common starting point, use the document that I circulated as a draft. What I would do is I would walk through each of these sections and we can discuss the draft as presented and work from there. All right? All right.
Is it, sorry, Your Honor, is it possible to get copies of that? I don't have it in memory.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
so
Matt.
much.
All right, tell you what we'll do is we'll just have a brief recess while we get copies for everybody. I apologize. It didn't occur to me that we would
No,
have
thank you.
difficulties.
Okay.
So we're in a brief recess. right, we'll reconvene. I think everyone has paper copies. My goal in this document, this draft, was to keep our priorities high-level strategic, not get too fine-grained into the weeds. I think in the past, some of the strategic, or rather some of the priority-setting documents we've had have been extremely fine-grained, extremely detailed. What I was looking for or seeking in this was to create a higher level strategic goals and priorities, rather, that could then be addressed by city administration, filling in the tactical level actions. So the first one was fiscal policy, which certainly is one of the most important things that we manage or oversee. And it reads, the city will adopt a balanced budget that minimizes impact on the tax rate while following a policy that maintains Concord's AA+ bond rating, complies with fiscal policy goals, and makes maximum use of federal and state funding. A specific focus area under this priority was to help the community understand the revaluation process and changes, prioritize efforts to reduce tax rate increases through strategic planning of out-year capital projects. Any discussion? Councilor Stacy?
Thanks. So this is very important, and I'm really glad this is our first one, and I really appreciate the focus area. What I'd like to add is that the council has training by the New Hampshire Municipal Association on financial policies. Because this is the top priority, I think it makes sense for us to be able to find solutions to understand all the tools that are available to us. And I know as members, that we do get free training. That would be my request.
Okay. Discussion. Councilor Todd.
Thank you, Your Honor. I wanted to thank you for putting this draft together, first off, as a start. I think it was a difficult assignment because there was obviously a lot of requests to pare it down, as you described. And I think you did a great job to get us at a starting point. We can have a really good discussion about everything. So specific to the fiscal policy, I kind of like the way it is now. What I did was, as an exercise, I went back and I looked at the last year's priorities and I determined which things are missing from the draft that you created. So there are things in this section, for example, that are used to be called finance and technology in the last year's priorities. So we had maintain compliance with fiscal policy goals, debt ratio. That's the reporting really is of that, as I saw, was like the end of the fiscal year. So I don't know that we need to have a regular quarterly update on that. Similar with cost containment, health insurance costs, that's really great info, but I don't know that we really need to have quarterly reporting on that. Same thing with the technology infrastructure projects. However, pursuing federal and state funding, that to me has been an excellent resource. I've had constituents ask me questions about grants, and I've been able to turn to that just in one place and have an excellent listing of all of the grants that we have applied for and the dollar amounts that are associated with those grants. So I think that that's great. And I would just, if I could, maybe it's a question for the city manager, but
Sure.
I'm assuming that in the new priorities, makes maximum use of federal and state funding will continue to allow that quarterly reporting on the grants. So you would just take that language and use it. Okay, good. Could I have a follow-up?
Go ahead.
So I think overall, as we're starting to do this review here, generally last year was kind of a heavy document, a lot in there, but it was very well organized. So you had goal 1, ABC, for example, and that allowed for easy kind of progress reporting in the quarterly reports going forward. So I guess I had another question for the city manager, which is, the format that we have right now, are you okay with that? Would you prefer, as we're going through this, to assign numbers or letters to any of these to make it a little easier to do the quarterly reporting?
No, I think, if I could.
Certainly, go ahead.
So, no, I think what we would use is the same structure, and anything that we're doing that we thought that would possibly fall under here would just create a separate number for it as a reporting piece that would go on. And sometimes it'd only be, like you say, something would be a quarterly thing. So others would just be one annual thing that may occur in the first quarter, but then it stays, or maybe it comes through in the fourth quarter or something. But no, I don't need a detailed itemized list.
Just one more quick
You know.
follow-up.
Go ahead.
Then, and so, but I'll assume though, that if we don't have something in here, you're not gonna be reporting on it. So in other words, we actually have to have language in here that has some kind of, you're not gonna second guess us and to say, oh, I think they meant this, or they probably also want that. We really should make an effort as we're going through this process, if we want something to be focused on, to actually include some words in here,
If
right?
If
Go
it's
ahead.
something you specifically you wanted, then yes, add it in there. But what I was looking at is an overarching goal, and if there's something that isn't necessarily stated right there that I think fits underneath there, then I would add it to it. And then if you tell me we're not interested in it, I'll just make sure I don't keep doing that. But it was I figured more the better.
Yeah.
So to add that, but it would be something. I don't know, if something came along that didn't specifically get called out here that I thought would be part and parcel to this whole discussion, then I would just add it to it. And of course, generally what I do is I end up talking to somebody, Fiscal Policy Advisory Committee, the mayor, other people. You call me with ideas, and then I can just.
And you can add it in that way too, right?
Yeah.
Okay, but basically as a starting point though, if we want to ensure that it's going to, because that'll be just based on your judgment. If we want to make sure that something's in, we should make an effort tonight to put it in there.
That's
Right,
best for
that-
both.
easier for you and,
Absolutely.
right, yeah, thank you.
And I would just add, I think the broader the language, the better. Otherwise we start getting into a checklist like we've had in the past. Counselor.
Thank you, Your Honor. I actually was going to say just what you were just starting to mention there, that I think that over the last 2 years, especially in the last year of this cycle, we got into the habit of checking a box on a priority as opposed to being flexible as to what is coming at us on the council for the ability to pivot and be more agile. And as you stated in your council remarks, taking on as the challenge of mayor, that we're going to be facing some challenging times. And to just check a box will not be good enough. We need to be flexible and agile at the table. And I think that we would expect the same of our city administration. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for obviously doing the work and putting this together. My initial sort of reaction just in general is that I think we have too much on here. I think, if you have more than 3 priorities, you don't have any priorities.
Mhm.
And so from my perspective, I think we should try and narrow this to 3 if we can. If I were to take a pick, I would start with fiscal policy, economic and community development, and then infrastructure investment and asset management. I understand other people might have other priorities, but those are the 3 that I would focus on.
And I would just echo exactly what Councilor Fennessy just said, but I was actually looking at the idea of even having one and it be, fiscal policy and economic development. So, but something along those lines I think is very attractive to me so that we can hyper-focus on the areas that are most important.
Counselor Schultz.
I feel seen. I would like to say that I'm not opposed to that, but housing and human services, that bullet point would be my second priority, pretty close behind the fiscal policy piece. And I'd also have to make a recommendation in terms of not just that we would want to minimize the impact on the tax rate, but look for ways that if people hit a particularly more difficult time paying their taxes this time, I feel like we need to find more tools in the toolbox. I don't know what that is, but I think it's just going to be even harder this time than it has been maybe ever in my lifetime. But I would say housing and human services are to me a much higher priority than some that were mentioned.
Thank you. Counselor Kurtz.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for putting this together and giving us this great starting point. I appreciate the focus areas, and you and I talked about this prior to tonight, so I'm reiterating for everyone else that I also feel that there's a lot here, and for me, the focus areas help streamline it. The things that are sort of above the focus areas are things that the city's been doing well consistently for a very long time. And while I certainly don't want to suggest that we don't care about those things, if we are looking for a simplification of this document to say where are the places for growth, where are the places where we as a council really want to direct staff to put the greatest energy, then I could support simplifying this a bit. But I would want it to be clear that the messaging is not that the items not on the list are things we want staff to forget about. Though I have high confidence that none of our city staff would just be like, oh, they don't care about that anymore. Fantastic. So.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Councilor Grady Sexton.
You know, one of the things I was thinking about as well was, you know, having a sort of more focused list of priorities, but then having a separate companion document that allowed for the same updates that we consistently see in those areas that I think we all find or have found very helpful from the city. So it's just sort of a hybrid approach, a different way of looking at things.
Okay. Councilor Caleb.
Oh, thank you. I liked this document the way it was set up. I agree with Councilor Kurtz about, like, I really liked the focus areas. I think within each of these headings, there could be some paring down or maybe some small expansion on certain things. But the focus areas, I appreciated maybe more like just a better organization. But I'm not of the opinion that we should reduce the number of categories. And I think just considering that these priorities guide staff work, they all kind of represent different types of staff work. So I don't think it's too much is what I'm saying. And I know we started talking about the fiscal policy category, and I just wanted to throw in there, I think Councilor Schultz mentioned something about tax relief, tax exemption. I think if we're within that focus area where it says help the community understand the revaluation process and changes, if we're on the theme here of communication, I would throw in there communicating to the public their options for tax relief or exemption. I think communication is going to be really important as we go into the budget and also at the same time of the revaluation, which folks already have a million questions on. I would like to emphasize communication under fiscal policy.
Councilor Horn.
Coming into this before you gave us your document, I really, in speaking with my constituents, I really only wanted two goals, which was raising our revenue, which obviously is economic development generally, and then reducing our spending and tax dollars. So I was very appreciative of this much shorter document. I think it encompasses a lot of that, but I would agree with Councilor Fennessy that I would really like to reduce it to goals to prove to our community members what we're really planning on focusing on these areas.
Would you, question for you, Councilor Horn, would you agree with the same three that Councilor Fennessy mentioned, and I think maybe Councilor Grady Sexton?
I would want to move the housing, stability, and human services up into it as well.
So you're saying four? Like
Yes, probably, yeah.
Fiscal policy, economic development, infrastructure, and
I'm
housing.
sort of seeing fiscal policy and economic and community development as one, so, but yes, either way.
Who hasn't spoken? Councilor Seku.
Thank you, Your Honor. And I second whatever everybody said earlier. This is a solid document that we have a ground to start with. And many of the councilors that I got an opportunity to speak with, we really wanted something that is as condensed as possible, 2 or 3. And I think you hit them all. What I like on the first fiscal policy part is really the focus area where we talk about community, understand their evaluation. I think we don't do as much work, and it's to join what Councilor Caleb said, communication, but education and awareness, I think it's key, because there is a lot of great work that is being done that when we educate or when we communicate or we bring awareness to the community at large, it will help us really focus. And I join Councilor Hunt who said that fiscal policy, economic development, when we increase the tax base, we will reduce hopefully the tax. So now how can we balance it to make that fiscal policy and economic development one bulletin point so that we will work on that increasing the tax base by reducing also the tax burden if possible.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Brown.
Thank you. I'd like to suggest that we adopt a capital improvement plan. Other communities have them where it's 4 to 6 years, and they prioritize projects based on need. And that can go, I mean, because we're looking at within the last 12 months, there have been projects, massive multi-million-dollar projects that I feel like we could have avoided if we worked with the school and we had a true capital improvement plan to anticipate these projects, save for them, and the community would understand, okay, we know this is going to be a really high tax year because of this project. So I'd like to have the capital improvement plan as part of the fiscal policy, and I think we have to educate people about the exemptions within the next 2 months, because they need to submit exemptions by April 15th in order to have them applied for this year, or for December.
Councilor, in regards to the capital improvement plan, I just want to emphasize that the city manager in his remarks at the school district's legislative breakfast yesterday morning, which I know you attended and a few of the other people attended, he very clearly indicated that our strategy was to take a hard look at our capital improvement plan moving forward with an eye towards the commitments that have already been made. Is that an accurate summary, Mr. City Manager?
So you, yes, we'll have a true capital improvement plan. Great, thank
That's
you.
what he said.
Good.
You have a true.
We have a 10-year plan.
I don't understand anything
Yeah,
that
no,
you're saying.
other people have shown me different examples of capital improvement plans that are like 4 to 6 years and have the projects that are prioritized.
Right.
And I feel that we had, within the last 12 months, we had a lot all at once that, I think we
Again, I
could
don't understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
have. Well, the school was.
Very confusing.
I'm gonna go to Councilor Foote
Those were
and
the
then
areas.
Councilor Schlosser, then Councilor. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm
It's
sorry.
okay. No, you can, they
No.
have not spoken, so absolutely, I'm fine.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I want to give everybody a
You
chance to.
use my words. No.
Sorry, Councilor Foote.
First, again, I want to reiterate what everyone has said. I think this document is a great starting point. I think that you're thoughtful, and I think you did a nice job prioritizing the priorities. I absolutely agree with Councilor Fennessy. Fiscal policy, economic community development, infrastructure investment are all critical to this community. I honestly, I'm looking at the economic development portion of this and the fiscal policy 1 and 2. And, we're all hearing the strain that taxpayers, property taxpayers are enduring and going to endure more than they are now. And it concerns me for many people on fixed incomes or, families. It's very concerning. And that should be our highest priority, and it shouldn't even be in the same category as everything else on this chart. The economic and development, I'm kind of opinion here. I think that the biggest thing that I hear on that, and is why I will prioritize it number 2 in my mind, is that there's been instability in the planning department over the last 10 years, and I think we've had 5 planners in 10 or so years, and I think a lot of the noise we hear from developers and others is because we've had that instability. We need to have stability and consistency in the planning department, and I think that's easily attainable, and I don't think it should be any. Honestly, from my experience, I think if we could brought stability into that department, I think that would really bring us a long way and have some gravitas along those. Can't agree more on infrastructure. I don't know how many of you have been out running, walking, doing other things, but the roads have taken significant impact with this freeze-thaw storm cycles we've had this winter, and it's obvious that we need to prioritize our roads. And I'll just throw in on the last page is I think recreation infrastructure is also important for quality of life issues. So those I agree with those with Nate wholeheartedly, or excuse me, Councilor Fennessy wholeheartedly on his part. Thank you.
Councilor Schlosser.
Thank you.
I agree with it. I think fiscal policy and economic development is, I think it's the property tax impact that's impacting our residents the most. And this point in the last sentence of the fiscal policy, maximum use of federal and state funding. I think this is more than just waiting to see what comes down the pike and doing the best we can. And I was impressed, I've been educated the last week or two by the city manager describing the history of downshifting, both cutbacks in state funding coming to cities and towns, and the downshifting of like pension expenses and other things. And partly this impacts communities, even other smaller communities more than us, who depend on state funding for infrastructure, perhaps more than we do. And we complain that other surrounding towns don't build the housing, the affordable housing that like we do, and yet it's difficult. It's expensive because of the infrastructure. This also impacts obviously our school funding. You know, we know that the cutback in school funding is really impacting powerfully our school board, our school system. So I will invite this. I don't think this is a suggestion as a different priority right now, but I'm going to suggest all the city councilors, and I'm going to bring this up tomorrow with our state legislative partners, that we join a bipartisan municipal officials and state leaders network, action network, to really advocate for better state funding for both schools and helping towns and cities with infrastructure that we used to get, it sounds like. We used to get funds that periodically we could tap into. And I think that it's not just cities that are impacted, and it's not just Democratic cities, it's really a bipartisan issue, because across 70% in the school issue, 70% of communities, cities and towns are net losers, and 70% of the people are impacted. So I think there's an opportunity for broad bipartisan coalition to really help the state right-size this and give fair share to cities and towns for both infrastructure and, which will help housing, and for school funding. So I will be circulating sort of an invitation, if you will, that we all join and be part of that sort of bipartisan action coalition to really advocate for school and infrastructure funding at the state level.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Fennessy.
I'm good.
Councilor Credivic.
Counselor Foote said what I was going to say, with the exception of the email that we received from the chamber, specifically focusing on removing barriers to commercial and residential development through regulatory and administrative reform. I thought that was really important that they gave that to us and that you included it here. I think that if every single citizen understood the primary income that the city of Concord has is property taxes, we must do everything possible to generate property tax growth, period.
Thank you. Councilor Grady Sexton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm wondering if we can all agree that the term fiscal policy is not very descriptive or accessible, and maybe we could say something like what we all have discussed, which is reducing the tax burden or cutting taxes or something. I mean, for me, when I was thinking about these priorities, I was like, okay, tax reduction through economic development, but something maybe even more basic than that, cutting taxes, right? Or, you know,
improving the tax base.
yeah, and I think the other thing is that I really like this focus area under economic and community development, how you framed this, remove barriers to commercial and residential development through regulatory and administrative reform. What that says to me is that we're making it clear that the city's job is to help businesses to comply and to succeed, not to create hurdles for them. But I'd love to take this a step further and maybe find language that says that, you know, our goal as a city is very simple. If you want to open or expand a business, you know, Concord should be the easiest place in New Hampshire to do it. Clear rules, fast answers, and a city government that sees you as a partner. Something like that. Just making this a little bit just more accessible, like just saying it.
Well, it's interesting that you say that too, because, you know, I mean, we just had an issue where 603 Barbecue, which is hugely popular in the city, is losing its home, you know, due to a number of circumstances. And my understanding is that the post on social media that the owner threw out, you know, looking for another venue, received 1 million hits because it's a hugely popular place. And I know that over the last several months, in response to my request, the city staff has worked with him to try to identify and to try to facilitate and advise on some of the other properties that he's looked at. But that really does bring the question. And and in addition to that, I'll say that there is one city business, one Main Street business in downtown Concord, which is closed due to the retirement of their owners. There are 2 others that I'm aware of that I haven't confirmed this, that likely will also be closing due to retirement. And probably ever since I joined the council, I've been talking about the need for succession planning on Main Street, because we have these cornerstone businesses that are owned by aging owners, and some of them, at least one that I can think of, one owner has in fact created a succession plan. I think 2 that I'm aware of have created succession plans. But that kind of begs the question: what is the city's role? I mean, we're not in the business of picking winners and losers, but what can we do to facilitate, creating businesses here and sustaining, particularly small businesses, which are the backbone of our downtown. Councilor, I'll tell you what.
Okay, thank you.
No, go ahead.
Yes to all of that, Mr. Mayor. I have been, thinking about this sort of small business ambassador program or something. It's just nebulous, but it's in response to Alex Doyle of Revelstoke speaking at EDAC about how he gets calls all the time from individuals who are interested in starting something in Concord, and they recognize that he's been successful here and has done a variety of things, and they reach out to him, and he is very generously and informally sort of giving tips on how he has navigated his processes with the city. But I would love to see the chamber and city staff and individuals like Alex who feel like they have a handle on how things work here really coming together, and that could contribute to succession planning, because while there are established business owners who are moving on to a different phase of their lives, there are also potential entrepreneurs who may feel really interested but not know where to begin, right? And if those connections could be made, we could have a very robust thrive community of entrepreneurship and business ownership.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just want to share that anecdotally, I've talked to several landlords along Main Street, and there's a bit of a fear that the party's over since the renovations have been done, 20 years ago, and we really are entering into the next phase. So where do we go from here? Where do we transition? How is it going to look differently? I know a lot of the landlords are very careful, or try to be very careful about who they rent to keep the level of services and the consistency, up here and not down here. And a lot really forego renting their space out just to anyone. And if it's not the right fit, to their credit, they hold back. But that really does need to be a focus, because Main Street's been such a success. I would hate to lose ground. And there's a bit of a fear along Main Street that that's going to happen.
You're talking about certain types of businesses that don't generate evening activity that.
Yes, yeah. I hesitate to identify specific
businesses. And I do too, but yeah.
But you want a nice mix of businesses along the Main Street and not a concentration of things that are open until 5 p.m. and then shuts
I know
down.
Former Mayor Craig in Manchester once offered to swap me a couple of restaurants for a few retailers.
Yeah.
So on Elm Street. Councilor Davey, I haven't recognized you yet. I'm sorry.
I like getting to 1 or to 3 or 4 of this list. I'm glad Councilor Grady Sexton brought up the phrasing of fiscal policy, because adjusting to something a little bit more accessible would bring me closer to making that number 1 for me personally. I want to circle back to Councilor Foot's point about retention. Mr. Mayor, I'm curious about the high-performing organization category you listed. I don't think this would fall into my 3rd or 4th in that top 4 category for me, but I'm curious why transparency and outreach and city personnel got wrapped up in the same category.
Basically because let me see if I can phrase this. Basically, because we want to have a transparent organization. We want to have an organization that's easy to do business with. We want we want to have an organization that is attractive to talented people to come work as part of our city administration. I also felt that it was important to talk about communication as part of that as well, because a lot of the communication comes from the administration or comes through the administration, and I felt it was really critical. And I also have heard members of the council, particularly some of the newer members of the council, talk about the need for 21st century communications with the public and providing the information that the public needs, particularly in the current environment where there are many, many formal and informal communications vehicles, and older communications forms are changing. New communication vehicles are emerging. A part of this to me too is, although I didn't specify it here, is that, for example, Concord TV, which is broadcasting this or taping this tonight, it's the only non-editorial source of information about city meetings, city government, activities in the community. And I think that we, looking forward, need to think about, Concord TV is funded through the fees that are paid by the cable services. And the cable services are frankly
winding down. Yeah.
Wearing down. Yeah, they're winding down. Those revenues are less and less. And so looking in the far forward future, I think we have to think about how important is Concord TV, to the community, and what its future is. Because it's been incredible to me to be able to have all of this content of our meetings, city council, planning board, zoning board, and I'm probably missing something, this meeting, available to the public to watch at their leisure, and available for us to also access. So that's why, I hope that answered your question. That's why I did that. I phrased it that way.
Kind of.
Yeah.
I do understand the importance of both, but it's just interesting to have them wrapped up in the same category. It's not a big deal.
Let me
I lost my train of thought.
Let me also explain. And generally, what happens, with these sessions is, we agree upon priorities, and the staff takes this conversation back and generates a document for us, and then that will come back to us as City Council for approval. What I'm hearing, let me just throw something out. We can certainly talk about renaming fiscal policy, although but what I'm hearing is there seems to be consensus that what we're calling fiscal policy now, economic and community development, infrastructure, and housing stability and human services are the top four for the city council. What if we set those aside as our top priorities, and we could either, harkening back to what Councilor Grady Sexton said, we could take the remainder and make those subsidiary. Say these are kind of the also rans. These are also important, but don't rise to the level of these four. Councilor Todd.
Thank you for that suggestion. I think I was on the same track from a comment Councilor Grady Sexton made, that there are maybe some of these in here that even if they're not on the list, it doesn't mean that the city is not going to be paying attention to them.
Right.
So let's look at the other ones that are not in the four. So public safety, health, and community well-being. Well, I'll tell you right now, as Councilor Keach was saying, I've spoken to Pennacook businesses, and they think that that's one of the top things on their list. They absolutely think that that's crucial to their businesses and to maintaining order, basically, in the community. And I think if you talk to residents, they feel the same way. But just because it's not on the list does not mean it's not going to be a priority, and it does not mean that the city manager and city staff are going to ignore it. So I'm wondering if there's really a necessity to put that in there, considering that we do have these other four focus items. So that would be one. Maybe we just don't need to put that in there if we're all comfortable that it's kind of goes without saying, as it were. And then the high performance organization, and basically that seems to suggest that what should also be obvious, which is that we're going to be transparent. We're going to try to communicate effectively with the constituency and with residents, and be able to provide them with the information that they need. And that's really part of our jobs as counselors. We're going to be doing that anyway. So maybe we don't really need to have that in there. Environmental responsibility, again, that's something that we have a plan. So we have our renewables plan, we have our goals that we set, and those were all approved by the city council years ago. And so we know that we're going to be working toward those. And I would think as we go through, again, as I was saying earlier in my remarks, it may not be something each quarter. Maybe one thing happens, as the city manager said, maybe one thing happens at the first quarter, and then that's it for the rest of the year. Maybe we don't really need to have that reported, on an ongoing basis. So maybe we don't really need a subcategory if we can just work with those four. And I think also there's a possibility that we might be able to tweak it somehow, that we could combine fiscal policy and economic and community development. But I know that there are some differences in there, so I think I'd be comfortable with going with those four as the main category.
Russell Davies.
I would almost suggest that there be an outreach line or a few words about outreach within the fiscal policy category.
Outreach, could you clarify?
Given like the reevaluation project coming up and taxes and budget challenges we're going to be going through, I think that's paramount.
You mean the communication?
I think it's there though.
Go ahead.
But
Let's do conversation.
Yes.
I think it's already there because where they talked about help the community understand the relevant, and that's what we were talking about, education and awareness. So it's just trying to get that language so that people are educated enough to understand what the city is trying to do to really reduce their tax burden. So it's just, I think, the rephrasing, either adding education instead of saying maybe help the community understand, just educate and bring awareness to the community at large on that.
Judith, then you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we need it, and yes, it's partially there, I would agree, but help the community understand the revaluation process. I think so much of what we've struggled with and much of what the community struggles with is that all of the fiscal business of the city is incredibly complex. We work hard to understand it around the table, and then it's a whole other level to be able to communicate it to constituents. And anything that the city can do to support us in really clearly communicating what's going on would be incredibly helpful. So I would certainly support, not just help the community understand the reevaluation process, but help the community understand, the fiscal policies of the city.
Yeah, the awareness of what's going on.
Right, just like, because if we take out high performing organization, which I'm okay with, what I was really excited about was that focus area, which is update communication procedures to better leverage digital media, reach a wider array of constituents, create proactive materials, visual media, etc. for broad dissemination. I'd love to have materials to distribute on so many of the things that Mr. LeBrun understands beautifully and spends quite a while trying to explain to us, but I'm not always great at then explaining it the way he's explained it, right? So anything that would empower us would be a great shift in
Councilor Horn.
communication.
I wholeheartedly agree. I just think moving that focus area, those exact words, up to moving it into the communication part that we've put up here, just combining those two is perfect.
Councilor Kretovic.
Thank you, Your Honor. I don't want to miss the point that we need to be able to recruit, retain, and compete for talent and high-performing employees with the knowledge that the city manager's contract is done in 2027. And I don't want to speak for you, but you may not decide to sign with us again. And that's entirely possible. And so we need to be aware of that. But he also has leadership on his team that is also reaching the same age of being able to go spend time with their grandchildren. And I think that just in the last year where we've seen Chip Chesley and the Chief Osgood retire, that is consistent across the board. We're going to see that in multiple areas. And I think that the strongest part of any organization is the top and how we treat our employees. And I think that being able to retain and recruit employees, especially when we hear about shortages in the police department and in the fire department and plow drivers, and all of that is extraordinarily important. And I wouldn't want to miss that point.
Councilor Schultz.
Thank you. I'm not sure I'm going to phrase this well enough, but I'm going to try. I think I want to just reiterate, though, the point about communication in the sense that there's still a segment of people in Concord who just don't, unless you sign up for it or seek it out or find it, you're not connecting with the city directly. Maybe you see a bus. Maybe you buy a purple bag as a renter. I mean, I was blown away as we renters caucus folks. I didn't realize it was almost 43% of the city are renters. I didn't realize it was that high. I don't feel like a minority, you know, I mean, technically that is still the minority, but I mean, there's more of us than I knew. I had no idea. But if you're not signing up for the Parks and Rec or picking up that document, or, you know, if you don't get a property tax bill, you have to seek the city out. You have to know to sign up for the city manager's email list, which I find valuable. You have to seek it. So I feel like there's still, and part of that, I guess, is my job as a counselor, is to help to communicate that. But it's still, there's a piece of communication that is a lift, that is a real understanding. And I feel like there's just sort of a piece of the middle here that, you know, because you could sort of connect to it through the housing stability piece. But you know, in a way that leads to the homelessness issue and kind of skips a step. Maybe we talk about it, but that's where I feel like we still need to connect into some of the things that we were listing about affordability, and are there any things we can do to help reduce rent increases or give people who are struggling a little extra right now? I mean, because nothing is relieving right now any of the pressures financially on a whole segment of people. I feel like it's great to talk about entrepreneurship, but there's a whole segment of people that can't afford to because of student loans and medical bills and child care bills. I mean, I just feel like there needs to be a bigger exclamation point on just connecting on the economic piece as a whole, like above all else, like even above fiscal policy, because that doesn't touch it enough. Those first three things that we were listing of the four priorities we're discussing, it sort of connects to it, but I feel like it goes above everything else. And I hate the phrase affordability, but I feel like we need to really connect on that financial piece. It's almost like maybe we should call it pocketbook issues, and it transcends class in that way, because even the upper middle class are struggling at this point. I mean, no matter how you cut it, I feel like I can't stand on a high enough mountain in this city to scream it loud enough. Not that I would do that. I don't think I worded that as well as I would like.
I thought it was very articulate, frankly.
Okay. So like pocketbook issues, number one. That's it.
All right. Council Keach.
Thank you, Your Honor. To Council Kretovik's point, you mentioned a lot of good points about recruitment and retention that the administration should pay attention to. I also think it's really incumbent upon our council to make sure we're treating staff with respect in regards to retention and recruitment, because we need to value our staff, and that has not always been the case around the table in the last 2 years, and I really want to see that change. So that should be one of our goals as a council, I believe.
Let me pull us back to my earlier suggestion.
Councilor Caleb's had her hand up for a while.
Sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see you. I apologize.
No, I'm hiding. No. Okay. Yeah, I have a few things actually. I'm still thinking about what Councilor Schultz said. That distracted me from some things I wrote down, but to her point there about the economic times we're in, I was talking to a neighbor of mine, and he struggles to afford purple bags. And so I reached out to Adam Clark with a question about that, and he got back to me, and he informed me that, he said if people really are struggling to buy a roll of purple bags, the welfare office is here to help with that. And that made me really think, and this was before we got this draft here, that interaction, that made me really think about how how absolutely critical communication of the services that we have available is critical right now in this moment. I really appreciate Mayor Champlin recognizing that there has been feedback about communication coming from the city, and I think we really need to keep communication under a lot of these areas here. It's absolutely critical. It's also, you know, our policy direction and what staff does and our behavior as individual counselors, like we were told, contributes to the brand of Concord. And when that was said during orientation, that really stuck with me. And I think that, you know, Concord being this geographic area that we're trying to improve through economic and community development and public safety and fiscal policy and all that, Concord is also an idea in people's minds. So given that Concord is about 43% renters, right, and renters may feel a little bit less of a connection to the city than a homeowner who receives a property tax bill and all of that. That is what they say. And my ward is 75% renters, so including myself. So I think there's a lot that we can do and should prioritize in this challenging economic time. And, you know, given that people very much are struggling, I see it every day in myself and the people that I know, the people that I live near, and friends of mine, right? But just remembering that Concord is a concept too, and communication touches that. And then the second thing, or actually the main thing I had wanted to say originally, was in thinking more about what you all have said, I really think that the structure of this, I think that there are points in here that can be combined. I would not want to leave out the public safety, health, and community well-being section, but I think that later in the document, like when we're talking about housing stability and human services coordination, that focus area kind of does fall under community well-being. And public safety is also, you know, tied in part to the social services that we have, the safety nets that we have. And then economic and community development I see as, I mean, we could even include the infrastructure investment, asset management. It is kind of included in there to begin with. It's mentioned, and even the advancing sustainability to our economic advantage, I feel kind of falls under that as well, economic and community development. And then that sort of leaves me with three priorities. You know, I initially said I liked this structure, but I can see how we can pare it down. The fiscal policy, I agree with Councilor Grady Sexton about kind of rebranding that. Then perhaps a category of just community well-being that includes a number of things that were listed in here, and then the economic and community development. And I'm sort of struggling, I guess, with the high-performing organization section. I think, I don't know. I like it. I don't know if it falls really nicely under any other section, and it does obviously refer to, you know, how the city is hiring and retaining employees and things like that. I could see that as a fourth, but I think we can combine a lot here.
I have to confess, I really lost track of what you were moving around from place to place.
Oh,
Yeah.
I followed you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
No,
oh,
it's
you did, okay,
yeah.
all right, good.
I just think
Item by
sections can be combined nicely here. I think you've laid out some things that can be just like, yeah, combined together, right?
Well,
Could I?
yeah, go ahead.
So listening to this, great discussion. I think I'll go back to what Councilor Todd said, Councilor Fenix, Councilor Grady Sexton. Just because it's not in here doesn't mean we're not going to do it. Okay, so I'll give you a really simple example. There's nothing in here related to the skate park down at Kiwanis Park, right? And however, I would say it's in here 4 times. I would say it's under fiscal policy because we maximize the amount of federal grants that are available. I would say it's under community development because you're creating a welcoming destination for families. I would say it's under infrastructure investment and asset management because it's existing infrastructure that we have. and I would say it's under Parks and Recreation and Cultural Assets. So when I would report, I would take that, knowing that type of project, seeing that it actually meets 4 different needs, and that would be something that we would prioritize in the upcoming budget and in our work plan. If I looked at something that we're doing now, and it doesn't meet any of your, I'm not saying these are the right categories or anything else, it doesn't meet any of these things, I'd say, well, maybe that's still important, but it doesn't quite meet the priority of where the council wants to focus. So this document has several different purposes. One is you're communicating to the community what's important, what you think is important for the community. You're also communicating to me, hey, when you put together that budget in 3 months, we would like it to reflect these priorities. And if it doesn't, we'll tell you if it does, and if it doesn't, we're going to reform the budget proposal to make sure that it does, right? And thirdly, you're going to want to report on those things that are approved. So the budget document is not simply dollars. It's the farthest thing from just dollars. It's a work plan of where you want us to focus. So if I come into you and say, hey, we need to create a social workers program, which we did a few years ago, and it's going to be dollars associated with that, you would adopt that, or you would say, no, thank you, we're not interested in doing that type of work, and we're not going to put our dollars towards that. So without saying, don't worry too much. Don't worry too much. I would focus, if I was you, and I'm not, and I would never want to be you.
I will follow.
Thank you, I guess.
I would focus on 2 things. What are we doing now that you do not want us to focus on anymore? So is there something in there where we're doing that you're saying, that's no longer really important for the community? That's no longer really something we want to spend our money on. That's no longer what we want to spend city staff time on. There's one part. At every budget meeting that I've been through for the last 20 years, we very seldom have anybody come up and say, would you please stop doing Christmas tree pickup? Will you please stop doing leaf pickup? Will you please stop plowing the roads in a certain way? They're not. People want more. And that's what they all want more and for less money, of course. The other thing I would say, if there's things we're not doing now that you want us to focus on, hammer away on that. Put that in there, and we'll make sure that gets built into the budget. It gets built into the reporting structure of what it is. So if it's hey, we really need to get out in front of the expansion of our cemeteries because the aging baby boomers are going to be filling them up pretty soon, and people still not being cremated. We need to focus on that. Then I'll put a program together that will start buying up property for additional cemetery space, or create columbariums or whatever it's going to be. That's how this works. So again, don't to try to hammersmith this thing with 15 people. Good luck doing that. But I think if you focus on what don't you want to do anymore, and I'll add one more thing, and then my focus has always been on 2 things: fiscal responsibility. Are you getting value for the tax dollar? Can you stand in front of a resident or business and say, the money you're giving me, I'm properly applying, getting things done? And the other part is, what is the role of local government? Some people want local government to be everything to everybody, right? Other people don't want it to do the minimum amount you want to do. You folks just need to decide, what do you want us to participate in? In the past, if you go back 20, 25 years before a project like Main Street would ever be considered, or building a parking garage, that was a role the city would never think about even getting involved with. But then you had to change your mind. You said, we're going to make investments in important things to direct policy and create value in the community. You may be at the point now where the tax impact of folks is to the point where we don't do that anymore. We're getting out of that business, and it's not important to be building new roads or expanding it, as I talked about at the school district the other day. If you don't want to build new sewer and water lines and improve the plant, don't put in there, we want more housing. Strike that all out. But if you want more housing, you want to be able to make that happen, you're going to have to do sewer and water investments. That's the same argument that every community in the state is having right now at their town meetings. And they got to approve that $2 million warrant article to extend that sewer line or make that improvement to that plant. And I'll tell you, most of them are going to say, no, thank you. We can't afford it right now. And what are we doing? We just approved $25 million to improve the sewer up on the heights. And you're going to have another $30 million we're going to be doing down the plant pretty soon. so you can support new housing, new economic development, things like that. So again, the role of local government, if you want us to be out there actively doing these things, then that's gonna cost money, and it's gonna cost staff time and whatnot. If that isn't important, then it's gonna be much easier to pull it back and come up with a really tight budget that everybody's gonna say, hey, great job, no, very low taxes. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. That's the second one.
Thank you. So you made it easier, as always. Out of everything that we have been talking about and asking what should we focus on, and I think that was highlighted, but really removing barriers to increase commercial and residential development through regulations and administration reform. I think that point that they added there in focus area, part of the economic development, will help us do whatever you just listed, from improving our sewer lines, water lines, all the infrastructure which we have down here. So that really falls under the economic development, and that we can narrow that point to focus on that. And I think once that is increased, it will help also with increasing the tax base so that taxpayers won't leave the burden that I'm moving on. And the second thing, personally, I think community well-being and public safety is very important. What that looks like, as you said, either we say focus on this or not, but I think it's very important for this community to invest in anything related to safety, because cannot do anything without safety. So, and the third point is what we were talking about. So housing stability or human services, all these combined. So for me, I think really removing the barriers to increase commercial and residential will help us be where we have. So we can focus on 2 bulletin points then to increase the tax base.
Let me make I'm gonna go back to original suggestion, which is that, because I think we're gonna continue to kind of talk this to death. Yeah, again, take the 4, make 4 priorities. Whatever we want to call fiscal policy, and we can call it pocketbook issues, but it also is deeper than that, but certainly. So fiscal policy, economic and community development, infrastructure, housing stability, human services, make those 4 key primary goals, but retain the rest of them, notwithstanding Councilor Todd's eloquence. Retain the rest of them just so that the public knows that these are still issues that are of importance to us. I might suggest moving communication procedures up to pocketbook issues, because it ties in with the direction about the revaluation process, but also change that focus area to read, help the community understand the revaluation process and changes and fiscal policy, because we had talked about the importance to help the community and the public understand that. So that would take the focus area from high performing organization, move it up as a second focus area under fiscal policy. I also would add language to housing stability and human services coordination, support housing availability across the continuum and improve coordinated responses to community vulnerability, including the impact of the housing market issues on renters, to be responsive to that concern. And then again, the remaining items here, just hold them down as important but of secondary importance, or in other words, not the primary focus of the council. Regarding Councilor Brown's comments, which she began with about financial education, I don't know that I think that needs to be a priority, but I would certainly say and encourage members of the council to take advantage of all the education opportunities that are provided by the New Hampshire Municipal Association as your time allows, because I think that's certainly worthy of consideration. So what say you? Does that sound reasonable, Councilor Horn?
Just a quick thing, and listening to Mr. Espel speak, I think fiscal responsibility is a good term for the first one.
Does that sound?
Fiscal responsibility and communication.
And communications.
More than pocketbook?
Like pocketbook,
I
pocketbook
mean, you don't have to
policies.
use my word. But it does get to the taxpayers or
Like
to
reducing
citizens
taxes.
better. I mean, it
Yes.
kind of transcends everything.
Read easily.
Council Brown?
Yes, I just wanted to ask Counselor Davy, how do you feel, because I think he has great experience with community outreach, and I think looking at the master plan, looking at all the communication we want to have with people on fiscal issues and concerns. Do you feel that that suffices? Do you think we need more, you know, based on what the mayor had said, moving up communication procedures under fiscal policy? What else would you like to see? Because I really think we should lean into not just giving information, but receiving it, especially if we're looking at storefronts closing on Main Street. Residents will have great ideas of what they'd like to see and what they would patronize if it was there. So what are your thoughts?
May I respond?
Go ahead.
Thank you. I would struggle to respond with something that keeps things broad for this discussion, but I did have on the brain for the economic development stuff. I've sort of been wondering if we can do some more outreach with some of the interim zoning changes while we wait for master plan and new zoning to come along, because I think it's a little frustrating to hear that it'll be potentially 4 or 5 more years before we have a complete zoning overhaul. So I wonder if we can tie up some of the outreach being done for new master plan and support the consultant and whatever they choose to implement for some of the interim changes that we've been in discussion with. And I know some of that's tied up in what the state is pushing forward and we have to get in compliance, but for some of these parking and signs and things on Main Street, that's what I'd like to see. Thank you.
Yeah, great.
Councilor Kretovic.
Thank you, Your Honor. I was gonna add at some point, now is just as good a time as any.
Sure.
Economic Development Committee might want to take up doing a business gap survey. We did that early 2000s, like before 2025. I'm looking at Deputy City
He's
Manager
not
Walsh
looking
because
back
he
at
helped with the gap survey. And it was done by in Town Concord, which is really focused more on events nowadays. But I do think it's something that the Economic Development Committee could take on. It was not a heavy lift. It's really asking people what's in other communities that is missing here, or what do we see going away that we need to have on our radar to replace with the Concord Young Professional Network or others in the community. I think that would be relevant, because I don't want it to go unsaid, the changing landscape that we have anywhere in the city where we might want to have opportunity for something new to come in.
Okay, I will pass that on to
Thank you.
EDAC. Councilor Schultz.
I was just gonna follow up on that specific point. I remember that strangely. I remember that stuck out in my mind. I believe it was in Town Concord that did it, right?
It's us two right here in the room.
Because I remember
led it,
the
so-
need for a fish place was on the list, but I remember that
You're
vividly.
100% correct. A need for a restaurant that serves lobster.
And
Here
to
we are,
sell
and
fresh.
look at how successful we were.
And we lost our fish place at the arena too. If I believe that's still the case.
Yeah.
We had a fishmonger there.
did.
Yeah.
I think that's an interesting idea. I would love to see maybe the nonprofits or the external organizations pay for that rather than the city. I mean, I assume that was in Town Concord that paid for that.
It was funded through the city's Economic Development Fund.
I was hoping you weren't saying it was city funds.
Because no one else would fund it.
Right,
So-
exactly.
Gotcha.
So
Still
to
was
give you,
very
give you a little history on that, and Matt, tell me if the numbers are right. We were trying to encourage more residential development in downtown. I think at that time there were 7 residential units in downtown, roughly speaking.
Maybe.
And they were market rate.
They were market rate, yeah.
Right. And we were trying to encourage that, so we ended up, that led to one of the reasons for you working with John Cholian to do the Sacred Heart building. And at that time, when that project was being built, it was unfathomable that somebody would pay more than $300,000 for a unit to live in downtown, because who wanted to live in downtown Concord? And city's position was everybody wants to live in downtown Concord, but the residential, the property owners in downtown were very much against doing residential in downtown, because they have to deal with the 43%. They have to deal with the renters. And the banks giving financing wanted to make sure that whoever had residential downtown had guaranteed parking spaces, because a renter does not want to come home and not know exactly where they were going to park. So that was the whole thing. So we worked with the banks, we worked with the property owners, and actually was able to get people to do that. And then once the Sacred Heart project took place, then everybody realized, hey, living downtown near an arts district, what a cool concept. And then people flooded in, and, you know, is what you're seeing now. So
Interesting.
but that was all the city council saying, if this is ever gonna happen, we have to take the step and make this happen. Don't leave it to the private sector, because it's not gonna happen.
Councilor Fennessy.
Councilor Fennessy.
Thank you. This is kind of following up on that. As we sort of talk about Main Street, the big thing that I think we should all be paying attention to, which is an economic development, I think, and community development opportunity, is hopefully within the next year, there's going to be a parking garage coming down on Store Street. And there's going to be a huge area reopened for potential development. And so I think as a council, maybe this isn't a this year priority, although I think it should be. Over the next 2 years, that is going to be the next place where we have an opportunity to create an increase in property tax base, perhaps an increase in housing opportunities. I certainly hope an opportunity for some commercial development. That's the type of thing that I think we should all be thinking about now, even though obviously the garage hasn't come down yet, but that's the next big spot.
Well, and I think that speaks to reducing barriers, because that's a huge opportunity. Thanks for pointing that out, Councilor. Somebody else?
I just want to complement what Councilor Kurtz said earlier about the community development discussion that we had here, because I think that was very rich to hear what all the people around the table were talking about. Especially Alex eloquently said that when he get a call, he just said, hey, city, I have this. I said to Alex, do you walk them through the process as well? He said, no. I said, so how can we think about having did I call it mentorship program, right? Yeah, so having a mentorship program, because I think the chamber is a good resource with its member, and all the business around downtown can be an ambassador for this city so that they can communicate easily, because they already have a relationship with the city administration to help facilitate people that are looking to relocate here in Concord. So I think that's another thing that we should look at, the partnership between the city that already exists, which and the Chamber of Commerce, and trying to create a team of mentorship so that when those people reach out from New York or whatever he mentioned, we can say, yeah, it's easy. We have this team that can work with you to navigate the city, whatever you need through the city.
Councilor Kurtz, did you have your hand up?
Yes, thank you. I would just follow Councilor Siku by saying that removing barriers, building bridges is a way of removing barriers. So whether or not we tweak the language, I would certainly encourage staff that opportunities for partnership with places, institutions like the Chamber and other existing business owners is certainly a pathway to removing barriers for other folks to develop. I mostly wanted to say that I support your proposal for highlighting the 4, tweaking the language as you suggested, and including the others as important, but sort of a subset of where we would like to direct our energies for the next 2 years.
Thank you. What do we want to call fiscal policy? Councilor Grady Sexton has said tax reduction, I think. We could do tax relief, tax impact, pocketbook issues have been suggested.
I like Councilor Horn's responsibility.
And what was that? Tax?
I had said
Fiscal responsibility? I'm good with that.
And communication.
Fiscal responsibility and communication, that was
Suggested by-
Councilor Fennessy.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Making a good idea better.
Trademark, that's
Don't worry, Matt. I
Right.
will take care of him.
Do we have consensus on that?
Yes.
Yes, I love consensus.
All right, I love consensus. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Oh, but before that.
That was a little quick.
No.
you have reservations.
No, I don't have any.
I second that.
Good, Counselor.
Yeah, I actually did have a couple of other thoughts and comments as we're going forward with the editing process. So one thing that I noticed was that there was no reference here to the master plan. And Councilor Davey a moment ago mentioned in that same boat basically the interim zoning changes. Is that one of those items it's just so obvious it doesn't need to be included? Or is that something that we kind of want to say, well, obviously we're going to focus on that? I think, frankly, the master plan and then the zoning with it is one of the more important things we're going to be all working on as a community. So I thought to reference it here would be appropriate.
I'm not against it since things like contemporary things like the evaluation are mentioned that we know are coming through. So I'm not against including master plans.
I'll say something. So in some sense, I think, thank you for bringing that up, Councilor Tuck. I think that's an overarching priority, that the master plan is really first in, once in a decade, once in 20 years opportunity to really get the pulse of this community and what's the aspirations and vision for our community in the future, which will impact all of this stuff. I mean, and fiscal policy and responsibility and tax rate and everything else. So in some sense, we might want to have a preamble to the priorities that says we will really invigorate, the master planning process and really use it to guide our work both this year and in the coming years. So anyway, that's a plug for master planning.
I was going to say, certainly that's great. I mean,
I
I
have a
think.
suggestion about like where to put something about
Well,
this.
if we're going to put it, I would assume we would probably include that in economic and community development
Right.
because it really is a community development piece more than anything. Obviously, there's a big economic piece there, but and I think as long as it's on there, I think that we'll.
I agree. I concur.
Appreciate the sentiment. I
Okay.
totally agree with it.
Too grandiose.
When you're smushing things together, infrastructure, investment, asset management, it does include quality of life in the city if we put the bullet point for parks and recreation underneath that so it doesn't get lost because it's sitting there all by itself on the lonesome on the
Well,
second page.
it won't be lost. It'll be one. Don't worry. Yeah. Counselor Caleb.
Yes.
I can tell I'm going to have a problem with my peripheral vision here, so please be patient with me.
No worries. I had something I wanted to point out. The historic preservation initiatives was in our 2024-2025 master priority list, and it's kind of missing from this.
Counselor?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I meant to mention, I was going to suggest under economic and community development, under the third sentence,
Mhm.
protect neighborhoods from blight and deterioration that negatively impact area property values, comma, encourage historic preservation, comma, and encourage residents and business owners' efforts, et cetera.
I like that.
Okay? Does that? Okay, I'm sorry, I meant to mention.
Oh,
It was
all right.
a late edit that I thought of. Counselor Schultz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I feel like the way that you've described it and the way the consensus is formed is fine. I do think, though, that there is a fear in my part that we're still going to lose some of the details in either things that other citizens have sent in or things that we wrote. There are other priorities that probably still need some attention. So if there's, I think it was Councilor Grady Sexton suggested like an appendix or an addendum of sorts that isn't a checklist necessarily, but enumerates some of the things that would, like, for example, I feel like I can't leave this meeting if it didn't get highlighted. We have a lovely list of items in the Renters Caucus list that talks about some real questions we have of the city that we want to explore, like what tools are in the toolbox to, and this wouldn't just be about homelessness prevention, but things like rent stabilization, what happens as these eviction laws are going to be devolving thanks to the state, stuff like that. It's going to be, I think some of these things need to be answered. And I'm only saying that because this is on my mind.
Sure.
But I think there are things that, a number of items that folks have sent in that I think are still of use. So I don't know what bucket we put that in, or if it needs its own bucket, or how we do that. I still think some of that would be how we direct the staff. And I just want to say, I just hope we don't lose that. And then my second thing I wanted to say, separate from this, what we've developed, I do think we need to have some sort of a conversation about council meetings, how we operate as a council to this point. I don't want to dismiss what Councilor Keach said. I think that is important to me too, but also that we give more opportunities for citizens to speak about whatever they want. It's not the forum to do it today, but to put a pin in it, I think we should have open meetings where citizens can come and talk about anything they want, and then whatever councilors, mayor, staff, whoever wants to attend those, that we just listen to citizens. I think that we were approached by someone before this started that wanted to speak during this piece. I feel like, sure, people can send things in, but I think there are some opportunities we're missing, and I hope we can find the right way to have that conversation as a council and with you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor, to speak to some of your points, or hopefully touch on all of them. First of all the comments we've received are part of the public record, including the communication from your group. I think it's great. I think it's absolutely important to listen to our constituents. Just this week, I've been buttonholed several times by people. In fact, it took me about 30 minutes to get from Revelstoke Coffee to my car because I had conversations with constituents. Some of us hold meetings and availabilities. I have a coffee with the mayor at, weather allowing, at the Windmill at 8 o'clock on Saturday. I know that Councilor Schlosser is holding one of his Ward 7 meetings on March 3rd.
7 o'clock.
3rd at 7 o'clock. I think these are great.
7:30. 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock, to make sure you know. And so,
30 minutes early.
yeah. And I encourage all councilors to take advantage of those opportunities.
Posted at City Hall, town halls too. Yep.
Your Honor, I have a question. Well, this came up after we had done a parade, and a few of us were sitting around breakfast talking about having meetings. And I was paying for meeting space at the community center. When we have a space like Councilor Schlosser is having at the West Street Ward House, is that free for us to hold meetings for our to have community meetings?
I'll defer to the city manager on that.
No, it's not. Okay.
That's why Councilor Caleb does hers at the laundromat.
Correct.
Correct.
There's plenty of places, there's libraries.
It's not
open.
true, actually, though. This, as a state rep and also as a counselor, I've used the community center on Canterbury Road 3 times to no charge as a town hall open to everybody meetings. So maybe we're gonna get charged now.
Yeah.
But I
So you
was
actually
told
have
by
your
the-
own room? You have your own room?
Yes, we've had the
Thank you.
big room. Actually, many of you have been there to these, but we were told as long as we invited the whole public, which we wanted to anyway, that it would be no charge.
No.
Your Honor, can I make a suggestion that maybe each of us is allowed one freebie at the community center for a year, one freebie a year?
She got 3.
I know, but she's a state rep. That's her privilege as a state rep, right?
I don't need special
I don't know
treatment.
I mean, we can have, I wasn't seeking special treatment. It was just
It's
something that I asked for.
I don't think it's necessary.
I mean,
Yeah,
it's
I was gonna add, I find that interesting because with the golf course, we rent the space. And therefore, if I wanna use it, I have to rent the space. And we often have organizations that come and they're asking us for space. And corporations were pretty straightforward. Nope, we don't give free space to corporations. And nonprofits are typically taken on a case-by-case basis. But ultimately, we do have a responsibility to the taxpayer when we have something that we are charging space dollars for to rent. It's very difficult to turn around and go, nope, you get it for free just because you're an elected official. We should be paying more.
Councilor
right?
Fennessy can refresh my memory. I think that when we had our ad hoc committee that looked at public space and fees, I think we reduced the rental for a room at the community center to $25, was it?
Can't remember what the number is.
Yeah, it's
It's
not.
very low though.
Huh?
Yeah.
It's not high, and,
not high
you know,
at all.
and so I would just say, we all do get a modest salary, a modest salary as city councilor.
If Counselor Sekou has his hand up if he
Oh,
wants
I'm
to
sorry,
speak.
No, I
Counselor.
just
wanted
wanted to
speak
say,
something else.
thank you. What I wanted to say is the rental space is very low, but we did discuss about, as you said earlier, education. How can we educate ourselves to really better serve? Because the more we know, the better we do. How about the conferences that people attend? You remember I came to you a few months ago talking about people want to go to conferences, what you guys have done previously. I know many of us might not be available to go, but if there is an opportunity to go learn what that process should be.
We did eliminate city council budget as a way to reduce the tax rate last time. If the council wishes for us to add money to the budget, we can certainly ask the city council, the city manager to consider that, and it'll go into the budget,
I was just gonna say,
the proposed budget.
I think the municipal association has a lot of free programming, and also every year they have an annual conference, which
It's not free.
I generally go to. It's not free, but it's
Beautiful.
it's not as much as your salary for the city council. So.
Your Honor,
Brown?
we could use the training dollars, right, for like reimbursement, because I know there is a training budget. So like for housing or something like that, that is a possibility. Is that how it's been
Or
used?
city council training budget.
No.
No, there is a
Staff
training, there's just a training budget or a training reserve.
Be for the city staff, for the staff. We're not staff.
No, I know we're not staff.
I think you know what to do if you wanted
That's it.
$100 each times 15, that's 50, you know.
$1,500.
Do the dollars, we'll put it in the budget, then you'll vote on it, increase the taxes
I
by
don't want that.
$1,500. Or,
Yeah.
and
I
then,
want to go back to fiscal responsibility.
Thank you,
here.
yeah,
One
I
priority.
would like to reach closure on our priorities. I see Councilor Kretovic again, and then Councilor Todd.
Thank you. Your Honor, there was some really good public comments that were in here, and much like the chamber, one of their items made it to the bullet list. I'm not sure if the other one did, but I think that talking about the gap analysis and Concord TV and some of these other projects or priorities, can we go through this and perhaps refer them to the committees that would oversee some of these things for food trucks, et cetera?
Sure.
So that they don't go unsaid or unspoken, because people took the time to write us. We should take the time to listen to what they had to
I
say.
think that's a great suggestion, so refer them to the appropriate committees.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Councilor Todd.
Yeah, thank you. I was just in the economic and community development piece, the last sentence before the focus area. And I know that you added an additional piece regarding
Historic preservation.
which I certainly agree with that. But the way it was currently drafted, protect neighborhoods from blight and deterioration that negatively impact property values, and encourage residents and business owners' efforts to maintain the physical environment through standards set in local ordinances. I'm wondering if there's a way to reword that, because I'm thinking that an average member of the public is maybe not going to necessarily understand what that means. First of all, protect neighborhoods from blight is, what neighborhoods are we thinking of? I mean, or is this just like an imaginary thing that we don't want to have happen? Or I can't think of any neighborhoods right now, in other words, that have a blight problem. You know, we're not like a lot of other cities, fortunately, that really do have that issue currently. And then the piece about standards set in local ordinances. I'm not really sure what that means. What does that entail? What would that entail, in other words? Would that mean, in other words, the council would be creating and adopting ordinances that would encourage residents and business owners' efforts to maintain the physical environment? I don't really know what that means.
That language was suggested by Councilor Kretovic, so I'll allow Councilor Kretovic to speak to it.
Thank you. It's interesting because I have several houses that, even though I have a small condensed ward, we do have some houses of blight. Actually, the city manager and I were just talking about one that we believe is a hoarder house. And it's very difficult to tell from the outside, but given the lack of care for the property, it does have an impact in the neighborhood. And so while we may be looking at something and seeing it as, well, is there whole areas, we've also had places where there is blight in our community and maybe we drive by it and don't notice it, but we have to decide, is that something of value in our community that we need to increase the economic value of, or is it something that we should be looking at 79E to remove blight in our community so that we make it something more attractive?
Go ahead.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And I agree. I've certainly had instances in Pennacook that I'm aware of where we've had situations with blight. Usually it's been individual houses. And those have been circumstances that have had lots of complicated legal issues in many cases, where you have an owner that, for whatever reason, they actually own the property, but they're simply not caring for the property. And they don't have the means to do that in a lot of cases. So I don't know, how would 79E come into that? I mean, I'm not sure what, maybe the city manager could assist with some
79E allows for blight, doesn't it?
Go ahead.
I think this is, again, without wordsmithing this, this is where the piece where you put in something regarding the master plan, recognizing the fact that you do not have a role in the master plan, right? That's done by the planning board. You do not approve the master plan. That gets done by them. And then, but however, you will then have to do, coming out of there, you're going to have to do the zoning regulations that come from that. And the planning board will do subdivision and site plan regulations associated with that. So I think you could just weave something into there regarding the master plan, which would take care of the issue of blight. And I mean, that's really what the whole idea of the plan is to actually create those atmospheres and build on those neighborhoods. It really, the last master plan was built on the 2020 piece that you two did for the most part and led the charge on. That was. It all falls apart. It's all interweaved.
Can I ask staff to weave that master plan language into that section?
I'll work with you as you're doing your
pieces.
Yeah.
Can you read that?
Yeah. I can't.
Thank you, and just confirming though that will also retain your
Yes.
addition
Right.
with the historic
Yes.
preservation piece.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Yes.
Thank you.
Are we at a
Motion.
place? Yes, question? No, motion. Motion, okay, go ahead.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. We have consensus.
Yes.
We do.
Adjournment has been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Ayes have it. Thank you. Great work session, let me say. You guys are